changing that slide so you can hear yourselves think and I can hear myself think. My name is Nicole Beauchamp. Anybody heard of me before? Yeah. Okay, that's good to hear. That's great to hear. Like Mike had said, I am a Bay City, Michigan native and paranormal enthusiast. I have been my entire life. I founded the Tri-City Ghost Hunters Society in 2009. However, I have been investigating the paranormal for almost 20 years now. I actually started back when I was in high school. So I did a lot of investigating cemeteries and things like that, and then eventually progressed into getting into some really cool locations, some very historic locations like old asylums, colleges. I mean, I have been all over the world, which I will get into a little further once we progress. But I am one of the authors of Arcadia Publishing's Haunted America series. So there are several authors, or I should say many authors in the series, but I am the author of 3 books in the series, which Mike had mentioned. I am a historical preservationist, so I help restore history. A lot of the events that I do, I like to put the money back into these historical structures in which I am investigating or holding events at. Right now in Bay City, they're trying to make the Masonic Temple there handicap accessible, so that's something that I'm very passionate about. And considering that I do have a father that's a double amputee, so that's something that I really feel strongly about, making sure that these buildings are accessible to all people because they're beautiful and everybody should have the opportunity to see them. In addition to that, I am a paranormal tour guide. Again, we'll get more into that later. Currently not doing haunted tours in Detroit, I'm sad to say, but that's not to say in the future that couldn't be a thing. I'm a motivational influencer as well. For those of you who don't know what that means, basically what I do is I help people realize that you don't have to work, a 9-to-5 retail job. You can really do anything that you're passionate about. For example, I just helped my friend. She was unemployed, and I got her a book writing deal, writing a book for Florida. So she's going to be writing about haunted places in Florida. This is going to be her first book with a major publisher. She's just geek. She can't believe it, this is a really big deal for her. This is going to change her life. And so I just help people realize, you don't have to always work in retail or, an office job where you're staring at the 4 walls of a cubicle all day long. You can do anything that you want as long as you put a lot of hard work and dedication into it. So I like to influence people because back in 2019, right before this whole COVID thing happened, right when we were getting, I should say, into kind of like when the COVID shutdowns were about to happen, that's when I ended up losing my job. So that kind of inspired me to pursue massage therapy. Okay, so like I said, I've been all over the world. I've been to New Orleans, I've been to Salem, different insane asylums, the Tower of London, Paris Catacombs, Windsor Castle, basically everywhere. But these are just some examples of some of the places that I've been. And like I said, I like to go to these places, kind of investigate claims of paranormal activity, check them out, try to have an experience. And also at the same time, I'm putting money back into these places to help keep them restored, to keep them updated, and keep them open for future generations. And yes, I was blonde. Not anymore, obviously. But you might be wondering, well, how did you get started? Was it a TV show? Well, it was actually not. I was super young when I drew this picture on the left there. 2 little girls talking to ghosts. So it says, we tell ghost stories and get scared. Bonjour, ghost. So I was trying to write French, trying to speak French to the ghost. But as you can see, clearly, I've improved, right? And this should be a lesson for you all. If you're not too good at something at first, continue, because you might get there eventually, like I did. So I know some of you are probably wondering, well, you're from Bay City, so how are you qualified to write about Detroit? And you're valid in your thinking, honestly. But let me tell you, because I have a really good story for you. So October 31st, 2009, I began, for the very first time, investigating historic Fort Wayne. Anybody been there? Okay, yeah. It's a really cool place, and I did you have a question?
No.
Oh, okay. You're just raising your hand. Okay, so starting on that date, that's when I for the very first time, went to historic Fort Wayne and did my very first paranormal investigation. And since that time, I went for about 5 years while they were running their public hunts and helping to, do the ghost hunts and bring money into the fort. Well, I was sitting in the second Sally port in the Powder magazine, and I was just taking photo after photo, and basically what ended up happening is, I was being very pessimistic, and I said, yeah, right, I'm probably not going to get anything. But I was just taking photos anyway. And then this strange figure, hopefully you guys can see that, what looks like almost like a man standing there. I caught that on my camera, and all the other photos before and after were blank. So when I zoomed in on that thing, you could see right through it. So we assume that to be a shadow figure, and the Historic Fort Wayne Coalition believes that to be the third photo captured of a Civil War soldier at the fort. So that photo did make the rounds. It did wind up in my book, Haunted Detroit, where I do tell in detail the full story of how I captured it. It also wound up in the Taxpayer magazine, where anybody watch Ghost Hunters? Grant Wilson looked at it, and he said he believed it to be legitimate paranormal evidence. So that was published in a big publication. And then we also had it on several news stations. So like I said, it's definitely made the rounds. A lot of the white little blobs you're seeing are just like dust and debris because we were outside in a very dirty area. But we did figure that shadow person to be around 5 foot in height, or a little over, which was roughly about the height of Civil War soldiers back then. So needless to say, through the years, I really got, I guess, my education on haunted places around Detroit. So this book was something that I felt very passionately about doing. I love Detroit. I have a very deep love for Metro Detroit. I'm always in Detroit or the metro area. And so I thought I could do the book justice. And I just took a leap of faith, and people really seem to have enjoyed it. Now, who here has heard about the Nain Rouge? Anybody? Okay, the Nain Rouge. Who has not heard about the Nain Rouge? So we'll talk a little bit about the Nain Rouge. So Nain Rouge actually translates to Red Dwarf. It's French. And it's the oldest legend in Detroit. And I was shocked when I heard about it because I was into all spooky things, and I didn't ever hear about it until I went to some kind of storytelling night, some scary storytelling night, and then I learned about it. So Antoine de la Mothe Cadillac, he was the European founder of Detroit. He founded the city on July 24th, 1701. He was basically a terrible person, a liar, manipulator, very, very selfish, and he rose to fame by lying to people and just being generally a terrible person. His given name when he was born was not Cadillac, it was actually Lamé, but he wanted to seem more prestigious, so he told everybody that his last name was Cadillac, and people believed him. Well, King Louis actually caught wind of Cadillac not being a very ethical person, falsifying population records. He was trading and bribing the British, trading with and bribing the British. He was distributing alcohol, which he shouldn't have been doing. So basically, he was arrested for extortion and abuse of power, and he was sent to govern Louisiana, which was the poorest French colony, and eventually he was thrown into the Bastille in France. Now, who has been to Louisiana in the summer? Anybody? New Orleans in the summer? Yeah, so you know how hot it is. Hotter than hell. So basically, you can imagine why him being sent there was a punishment. Not only was it poor, but it was a swamp, it was miserably hot, and it was super uncomfortable. Anyways, so on October 1730, Cadillac actually died in poverty, and only 3 of his 13 children survived him. Now, many people think that he had such bad luck because one day while he was walking by the Detroit River, he was walking actually where historic Fort Wayne stands today, and he saw a little red figure. Now, this little red figure is very feared because it doesn't look like a little just red Keebler elf or something. This creature is said to have really sharp, razor sharp teeth, scarlet eyes, just, you know, horns like a devil. I mean, he's just very unsettling to look at. So when Cadillac saw this figure, he was very uncomfortable, he was very disturbed, and he struck the figure with his cane. The figure laughed and scampered off into the distance, and ever since then, he had the worst luck imaginable. So they call the Nain Rouge the harbinger of doom, because when people see this figure, terrible things seem to happen in Detroit, or terrible things seem to happen to the people that see him. So, I don't know, you know, what your opinion is on the matter, but I do also think the Nain Rouge is extremely symbolic for Detroit. Even if you all think that this is completely bogus, I think the Nain Rouge is symbolic for Detroit because Detroit is a very resilient city. It has very resilient people, and so I think, you know, it's a very symbolic legend. But I will say, whether or not you think this is complete BS, there was a Detroit Free Press article from October 11th, 1872, and there was a lady who actually saw what she basically believed to be the Nain Rouge in her house, and the way she described it is very similar to the legend. So the article says, saw a ghost. If there is any such thing as a ghost with blood red eyes, long teeth, and rattling hooves, then Jane Dacey of Elizabeth Street East saw one Wednesday night. She went into a dark room on an errand, saw the fearful specter, and fell down in a lump, fainting so far away that camphor had no effect. She was ill in bed yesterday from the effect of the fright. So, I don't know. Who thinks the Nain Rouge is real?
Did she have bad luck after that?
Well, she was ill in bed the day after she saw it. So, I would say so. Anybody think this is complete BS? Who wants to test the theory? Nobody, right?
I'll do it.
I don't blame you.
First.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about Alejandra Amalia, because she may be the very last person who saw the Nain Rouge. Now, Alejandra Amalia, she's I think she's actually a little younger than me, and I'm 34, so she's a living, breathing person, a Detroit native, and I think right now she lives in Boston. She just moved there fairly recently. But I interviewed her for my book, because see, she used to work at the Detroit Public Library, which I will be presenting at October 28th, so if you know a friend, let them know. But I will be presenting at the main branch of the Detroit Public Library on Woodward, and that one is actually supposedly very haunted. Now, Alejandra's experience there actually wasn't with a ghost like we think of a ghost. Her experience was with what she believes to be the Nain Rouge. So she was sorting files for the Burton Historical Collection. She went down to the vault by herself. She had the key on her. The door was locked. Nobody else could enter. And she was just sorting through the files, going through, making sure everything was, you know, organized in the correct boxes, et cetera, et cetera. So she was in a fairly dark vault, but she had, like, each of the bookshelves that she was working on had lights above. So she would turn on, like, say if she was working on bookshelves B and C, then she would turn the lights on for each of those shelves so that she could navigate between the two very easily. So while she was sorting, she kept hearing a sound. Well, she just thought, you know, this is beneath ground, possibly an animal could have gotten in. I mean, it's not unrealistic, right? So she just thought, well, maybe a rodent got in, no big deal. But she kept hearing it, and she kept hearing it, and she kept hearing it. Finally, out of the glimpse of her eye, she could see what looked like, she described this, like a little red gnome with a red hat and red outfit. Like run past, she said it was about the size of a toddler. So when she saw that and finally caught a glimpse of it, she was like, I'm out of here. Because she grew up hearing the story of the Nain Rouge. So needless to say, she bolted out of there, told her boss, I am not working down there ever again, sorry. And eventually ended up leaving her job at the Detroit Public Library's main branch. So again, I don't know, I will say that I don't know the legitimacy of the Nain Rouge, but I will say I trust that what she told me was real, because I could hear the fear in her voice when I did the interview. I could hear how distressed she was, and I tend to believe people when they tell me that sort of thing. So, like I said, I don't know if it was exactly the Nain Rouge, but I believe that her experience and what she saw was real.
Are you aware of the parade they have every spring?
Yes, yes, ma'am. Yes.
That's a ride.
Yeah, I can't wait to go someday. I want to go every year, but then I find out I have to work. I need to just take that day off. That's the beauty of being, a massage therapist. So the next place we're going to talk about is the Whitney. Who has dined at the Whitney or been there for a drink? Oh, lots of you. It's a nice place, am I right? Beautiful place. Well, we all know that David Whitney Jr. is possible for this beautiful building. He was a successful lumber baron from the Midwest. He was a very wealthy wealthy Michigan citizen and the wealthiest man in Detroit. He really loved his wife Flora, who was quite an ostentatious person. But he himself was not ostentatious. I cannot say that word today for some reason. But anyways, he wanted her to have the best of everything. So when she decided that she was not happy with their house on Sproat Street, he decided, I'm going to build her the grandest mansion of all time. Now, ladies in the crowd, I'm sure a lot of you are married or have been, but if you're not, get you a man that treats you like that, because that's how all women should be treated. So anyways, the Whitney was completed by 1894, and it was estimated to have cost $400,000, which in today's money would have been about $9.5 million. He had spared no expense when building the mansion, so he had special stones shipped in, he had stuff shipped in from Europe for the mansion, and basically if she said, hey, I want 16 fireplaces, he's like, no, you're going to have 17. I mean, that's how he was with her. So it was beautiful and everything, but unfortunately, Flora passed before she could ever move into the home. So he still continued, even though she passed, continued building the home technically in her honor, and that's why it's standing today. Now, David Whitney Jr., he actually suffered a heart attack and died in the mansion in 1900. He was laid out on the first floor for his wake and carried out of the home, by two of his friends. So, needless to say, right there is one death that has happened in the house. But in addition to that one death, you have a grieving spirit too, which leads me to, I guess, the hauntings that happened there. Okay, perfect. So David Whitney Jr., he is often seen in the Ghost Bar and the Absinthe Room. Those are both located on the third floor of the mansion. He's often seen dressed very smartly in very, high-end clothing. Even though he was not really into all the frills and whatnot, he did kind of live up to the part to some extent. Now, when people have gone to the Ghost Bar and gotten a drink and they're sitting there, chilling out, they often see him behind them in the mirror. And he's just standing there looking at them. And when they turn around, he's not there. Or they'll see him pass through, they'll see him pass from one room to the other. Now, my friend Mark Ortiz, he's with the Haunt Investigators of Michigan. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of them, but they are amazing, an amazing group, amazing people, and very, very legitimate in what they claim. So Mark was actually in the absinthe room with some of his crew members, and they were taking photos, and Mark was standing against the window. Well, after they took this photograph, you could actually see a man's head floating in the window behind Mark. So many people think that it's David Whitney Jr., and at least that's how it looks based on the photograph that's hanging of him in the mansion. But obviously nobody can say for sure. But Flora Whitney, she actually had 4 children with David Jr., so maybe that's why she looks so tired in her photo. I don't really know. But she desired a very lavish lifestyle. She was basically the Beyonce of this era, if you will. She liked, the glitz and the glam. Like I said, she died before the mansion was built, but she's still thought to haunt the mansion today because they believe she is consumed by sorrow and death. And that's because after her passing, David married her sister, who was younger than her, and then she moved into the mansion that was built for Flora. So if that's not already salt in the wound that he continued building the mansion and then brought her sister in to live there, I don't know what is. Now, Flora is often seen in the women's upstairs bathroom, actually she's been seen in both the bathroom and the lounge, but she's often seen in the lounge. She's sitting on the couch up there, and she generally has her hands like this, like she's covering her face, and she's sobbing hysterically. Now, when women try to talk to her and say, "Hey, ma'am, everything okay?" she doesn't say anything, and eventually she disappears. So she doesn't, from my knowledge, she's not necessarily a mean spirit or anything like that, but she cries a lot, and she's often seen up in that bathroom. However, she is not the only spirit that inhabitates that upstairs bathroom, because there's also the bathroom attendant. Now, the bathroom attendant, this is not an actual photo of her, for those of you who aren't too tech savvy, I'm just saying. But anyway, so the bathroom attendant is kind of a shapeshifter. The bathroom attendant can look in various different ways, which is why I added this photo up here, because sometimes she appears very scary to people, and people are uncomfortable in there and tend to run out screaming. Other times she appears just like you or I. I don't know, some people might think I look scary, but that's a matter of opinion, it's subjective. But oftentimes, she just looks like a normal person. So there was one instance where actually management had to get involved, because this lady, she was getting a drink at the bar, and after she had a couple drinks, she decided, hey, I gotta go to the bathroom. Everybody does that. So she hopped in there, and she just told the bartender, give me another one, I'll be back in a minute. Well, while she was gone, she met the bathroom attendant in the restroom. So she's having a whole discussion with her, talking to her. Now, at this time, the bathroom attendant didn't look like that, obviously. Looked like a very normal person, probably very nicely dressed. And the bartender's starting to get concerned because this woman has not come back yet. Her drink's been sitting out. He's like, I don't know where she went. Hope everything's okay. So eventually she comes back out. And he's like, I'm sorry, ma'am. I don't mean to get personal here, but is everything okay? And she looks at him. She's like, real nonchalant. Oh yeah, I was just talking to your bathroom attendant. He says, ma'am, we don't have bathroom attendants here. So at this point, she starts getting kind of aggressive. Probably the alcohol, but she's feeling a little peeved because he told her they don't have a bathroom attendant. She's like, well, I know who I was talking to. I was in there talking with her for a while. she says, this establishment is hiding people. So management ended up getting involved. They showed her the tapes. They sat down and rolled the footage, and she was the only person that had went into the bathroom or come out of the bathroom in that whole time frame that she was gone. So they clearly showed her, you know, nobody's hiding anybody. Like, you're just, you know, this actually happened and you're just drunk. But anyway, so if you go to the Whitney, look out for the two ghosts that are on the 3rd floor in the women's bathroom in the lounge that's adjacent to it. This is Sarah Whitney. This was Flora Whitney's much younger sister who actually got to live in the beautiful mansion. She actually lived in the mansion until 1917 and ended up dying of pneumonia. Now, after her passing, the Wayne County Medical Society ended up utilizing the home for a portion of time. And I will tell you that she was a bit obsessive in life. So she was someone that liked things in a very particular way. If the fine china was set up a certain way in one dining room, it had to be so in all of the other dining rooms as well. You know, she wanted like the salad fork here, you know, the steak knife here, you know what I mean? She was just very particular. So I will tell you that she also haunts the home as well. But we're first going to do a little fun test. No pressure or anything. But because it's Halloween, I mean, everybody likes candy, right? We're getting into Halloween now, and everybody wants a snack at this time of year. So I'm going to give a couple snacks away that I brought. Go ahead and take a little look at this. I'm going to give you about 10 more seconds.
10 seconds.
Try to remember as much as you can, and then I'm going to do a couple snacks.
I'm blind. Can you zoom in?
I'm sorry for those of you who can't see it. You can come up here real quick. You got 10 seconds though, so you better make it snappy.
Certificate of birth.
It's actually, I think it's certificate of death. Yes.
For Sarah Whitney.
Yes. Yep. Sarah Whitney's death certificate. Do we all feel good about this?
Nope. Yes.
Okay.
Give me 2 more minutes.
I'm gonna get off there because some of you are sneaky. I know how you guys work. Okay, so whoever I see first raise their hand is gonna be the winner. So where was she born? Yes. Oh, so I'm gonna ask a question. Whoever raises their hand first is gonna get the candy. What was her maiden name? I saw your hand go up first. All right, so Sarah's often seen in what they call the cage. Now, it sounds a lot more menacing than it actually is because the cage is just where it's a storage unit down in the basement of the mansion that is fenced in. So basically what they keep in there is all the cutlery, all the silverware, teacups, etc., etc. So that's where Sarah likes to hang out. They have often, like staff has gone into what they call the cage, looking for something in specific, only to discover that it has been taken out of there and put on an upper floor on one of the tables. So she, like I said, she's still, even in death, very OCD, very particular about how she likes her things. And she's pretty much keeping the mansion in check. So you can thank her for how nice it looks too.
Pretty cool costume.
Now the guest dining room, this is on the 2nd floor. Anybody eat in this room ever?
What is that?
This is the guest dining room on the 2nd floor.
What?
There is a significance to this dining room, but once I tell you, you might be horrified. So raise your hand nice and high if you've eaten in this room. Okay. Good number. All right, so the thing about this dining room was that back when the Wayne County Medical Society was actually over the mansion, it was used as a hospice. And this is where they kept all of the people that were dying. So, if that doesn't make you hungry, I don't know what will. So I would encourage you, if you haven't been to the Whitney yet, definitely go check it out. It's an amazing place. There's a lot of beauty to be discovered there, and the food is next level. And they do paranormal tours as well.
Can't remember.
You can have parties there.
You can. In fact, I tried to host one of.
I had a baby shower there.
You did?
She got married there in May.
Oh, that's cool. Congratulations. Now, the next place we're going to talk about is the former Detroit 6th Precinct. And I will tell you, those of you who didn't get any snacks, I like to do these little kind of giveaways during my presentation. Sometimes I give away, you know, the rich kid Reese's. Sorry, I don't have those today. You know, they're kind of pricey right about now. But anyway, for those of you who are interested in the Ford Motor Company or the automobile history, this place kind of goes back to that. But anyways, we'll be doing some giveaways throughout the presentation as well. So on January 5th, 1914, Henry Ford and the vice president of the company offered men $5 a day for factory work. That was a really, really large amount of money at the time. So everybody, of course, flocked to Detroit. The population skyrocketed to 1.6 million people. And because there was so much more money coming in for American households, people began spending more money. They began engaging in wide-scale consumption. So what they ended up doing, they were doing installment payments, utilizing credit. However, these methods of payment proved to be highly unsustainable, so people were basically digging themselves a hole. But they just didn't really worry about it because, you know, I feel like everybody is like almost one accident away from like basically being homeless, or, you know, it depends on the accident. But I mean, seriously, and especially in modern times, like, we're really struggling. But, you know, I will say that these people, they were feeling very comfortable, you know. A lot of these people working for the Ford Motor Company had these high-paying jobs, everything was going good, they were investing in stocks, et cetera, et cetera. Well, on October 29, 1929, the stock market crashed. 15 million employees lost jobs because of that crash. But President Hoover said, please do not change the wages because we still need our economy to be good. So in 1930, private companies promised to donate $1.8 billion toward creating jobs and improving the infrastructure. So because of this, all of this happening, they decided to build a new police station called the McGraw Station on the corner of 6th and McGraw. So throughout the years, like I said, unfortunately, I can't play the videos, but that's okay. We don't need the videos because I'll be honest with you, this one's a little hard to hear anyways, so I'm just going to tell you basically what it says. But on December 17th, 1985, there was a massive fire happening in Detroit. Now, prior to this fire, there was many investigators, paranormal researchers, all kinds of TV shows that went into the old police station, former 6th Precinct. And when they were in there, they kept getting on their audio recorders a boy saying, you know, that his name was Billy. So they just kept getting this name Billy. They didn't know the significance of it or who he was or anything like that. Well, they used to do tours there. There was a man named Ed Steele. Anybody know Ed Steele? He was the person responsible for renovating the precinct for many years. After it had fallen to ruin, he had went in. He got trees that were growing from the ground up in the building. He got those trees out of there. He removed a lot of drug paraphernalia, all kinds of nasty stuff that had accumulated in the building. And he was working to restore it to its former grandeur. And then he was gonna have, overnight ghost hunts, bring more money back in to preserve the place. I mean, he worked on this day and night. This was basically his whole life. Unfortunately, Ed Steele passed away due to COVID. And so this building is once again laying in ruin. Now, when they were doing a couple like ghost hunts or ghost tours there while the building was opened, in the brief amount of time that Ed had been there, there was a former police officer that had come in, and he overheard Ed talking with another paranormal investigator about this boy named Billy that they always hear in the precinct. And the police officer walked up to him and he said, "I'm sorry, excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt, but I know Billy." So, back again to the fire, December 17th, 1985. A fire is roaring through a home that was firebombed in southwest Detroit. Now, when the police officers get wind of this fire, they obviously take off. They're trying to, get to the destination to do as much as they can. While they are driving to the destination, they see fire trucks that are going in the opposite direction of the direction they're going. So they're like, wait a minute here, I don't think we're going the right way. Now, time is not something you can play with when there's a big fire ravaging a house. So they immediately, did the illegal U-turn like many of us do. And they swung around and followed the fire trucks to the house. Now, in the house were two little boys who were locked behind one of those steel the protective bars, security doors. You guys all probably know what those look like. Well, they were locked inside of there. Their stepdad could not get to them via the staircase, and he was on the upper level of the building. So it was winter, and so he thought, well, there's a lot of snow on the ground. I'm just gonna jump into the snow from the second story window, and he had the key in his pocket, and he said, I'm gonna go let these boys out. So he slid down the roof and landed on the ground, but the snow didn't break his fall. Instead, he broke his back in 3 places, and the key fell somewhere in the snow, and he could not find it. So, at this point, the whole neighborhood is watching as these 2 little boys basically burned alive. And this police officer that came in and said he knew Billy, he was one of the officers that had come into the home after basically it had been destroyed, burned to the ground, and had to break the bones of the little boys' bodies apart with his flashlight. So he was traumatized, to say the least. I mean, extremely traumatized. Now, after that day, he would see a small boy darting throughout the precinct, like a little shadow figure, running around. He could hear a child, and he believed that was this child, that one of the children that he had to break their bones apart. So I'm sorry, I know it's extremely sad and graphic, but that's unfortunately the history there. Now,
why do you have to break their bones apart?
that's what the morgue had ordered, I guess.
Get them out, or?
Who ordered?
Yeah, the morgue. The morgue had ordered
Oh,
them,
maybe
the
they're
police,
together?
because,
Separate them.
yeah,
To separate them.
exactly, yeah. So, this is not, these are not any photos of any of these children that were in the fire, but I did while I was doing my research, because when I write a book, I don't just write a sensationalized story and make stuff up. I sit down, I interview people, I go through archives for hours and hours and hours and try to look for anything that could possibly or potentially relate to the haunting, the story, and validate those hauntings. Now, one of the articles I found was from the Detroit Free Press and Zuma Press, November 13th, 1931. There's a story about these 3 children that were dropped off at the precinct back during the Great Depression. And the mother of these children put a note in the oldest boy's pocket. Now, the oldest boy is right there on the right. And she said, here, take this note up to the police officer and he will help you. And basically she fled town, and basically the note said, please take care of my kids. I can't basically afford them anymore. I will tell you that this tall boy here on the right side, his name was William. So that right there could potentially be Billy as well. So it begs the question, are there 2 Billies at the precinct? Possibly. So, now the Leland Hotel, this is a very, very haunted location, a very, this location has a lot of dark history. Who has been to the Leland Hotel? Okay, a couple people. I'm sure, not to be offensive, but a lot of you don't really seem like the goth night crowd. Would I be fair in making that claim? Okay. I mean that lovingly. You seem like wonderful people, just not so much the goth night crowd. But if you do feel up for goth night one night, you should go check out the Leland, because you can go to City Club, and it's pretty cool in there. I mean, it's really dingy, so to speak, but it's like they haven't done nothing with the place since it was built, so it's crazy.
It was nice in the 50s.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that. I've seen postcards. It looks really nice. And in fact,
General Motors people that they brought in from different places would stay at the Leland
yeah, they used to have conferences there. Yes, sir.
conferences.
Also, a lot of airline stewardesses
Yeah.
used to overnight there.
Yeah.
The Pan Am stewardess.
Yep. And I actually started collecting like old artifacts from the Leland. So I got this like little creamer thing, little dish. I should have brought it, but I forgot it. But anyway, so it was opened on April 20th, 1927, and it was one of the finest hotels in the city. Like everybody was saying, lots of people stayed there. They did conferences there. It was a really, really beautiful place in its heyday. Now this photo, I know it looks super vintage, but actually my cover photographer took that when we were taking cover shots for the book. So that's kind of a cool picture of what it looks like nowadays, but I know it kind of looks vintage. Yes?
What's the location?
Bagley and Cass Avenue? Yes. Now, it's currently being used as low-income housing. However, like I said, City Club's still open if any of you are feeling up for goth night. It was a hangout spot for Jimmy Hoffa and the Purple Gang. In fact, when Jimmy Hoffa went missing, it was one of the first places that people went looking for him. The basement was actually excavated in search of him, but they didn't find him there. However, it's a site of many freak accidents, murders, suicides. I mean, you name it, it probably happened in the Leland. Many people call it Detroit's portal to hell. Many people call it Michigan Cecil Hotel. There's many variations. It's got some other terms that I can't say here in this room. But I'm not saying that. I'm just saying some Detroiters have called it other things. We're trying to keep this like, friendly for the crowd. These were members of the Purple Gang. Give you an idea of who was frequenting the hotel. Not really how we imagine, I guess, gangsters today, but that's what they looked like, real dapper and kind of like very high-end members of society, I guess you could say, but they were horrible people. So I guess my point is don't judge a book by its cover because you don't know. You don't know who you're dealing with until you get to know the person. Here were some articles that I found when I was doing my research, because I had heard a lot of stories about the Leland being haunted, but I was shocked and amazed at the amount of articles I actually uncovered when doing my research. Like I said, these are 2 of them. However, in my book, Haunted Detroit, I detail a lot more of the articles and some of the other history. But this was a place many people during the Great Depression would go jump off the rooftop. This was a place during, the era with the Purple Gang and whatnot, where people get thrown off the rooftops. I mean, and they say to this day that, many people have seen phantom roof jumpers or phantom victims of the Purple Gang, just falling from the roof. In addition, they found many, many people dead in their rooms. And there was one point where the entire building almost went up in flames because it was not up to the fire code. Probably still isn't. But basically, because of all of those things, there was a lot of suffering there. Okay. So now we're going to talk about the case of Deandra Jones. She was someone who had stayed at the Leland in fairly recent years, early 2000, like before we got into 2010. So she stayed there. She was staying with her sister. And actually, to be honest with you, I think it was like the early 2000s. I can tell you that for sure. It wasn't like in the past 3 years or anything like that. But anyway, she went to go stay with her sister. So she flew across the country to stay with her sister at the Leland. Her sister was living at the Leland at this time. And while she was there, every night she was woken up by what sounded like a man choking. So she just thought, well, maybe it's the next door neighbors. That's not unrealistic in a place with that many rooms. However, when she ended up telling her sister about it, her sister said, I don't have neighbors next to me, and proceeded to open each door and show her that there was no neighbors. So now she's like, all right, this is, I'm getting so fed up with this. I'm tired of listening to this every night. I can't sleep. It was driving her to absolute madness. So she said, I'm going downstairs. I'm going to tell the front desk, I can't take any more of this. I don't know who's causing the ruckus, but I'm not dealing with it anymore. So she goes to take the elevator down, and she goes up to the front desk, and she explains the situation, and they say to her, I'm so sorry, we'll see what we can do. But they essentially didn't do much of anything. So she goes to take the elevator back upstairs, and while she is doing that, the elevator breaks down. And for those of you who have not been to the Leland, the door likes to fall off. Like the elevator will literally fall apart. So she's like, well, not today, Satan. And she goes ahead and starts climbing the stairwell because she's not about to find out what else is about to happen. She's not going to be another ghost, so to speak. So while she climbs the stairwell up to the floor that her sister lives on, she walks out and she starts heading toward her sister's room when she hears something behind her, and she turns around, and there's a man standing there, dressed very much like a member of the Purple Gang, very dapper, but she notices upon closer inspection that he has a bullet hole through his neck. So she takes off running, slams the door shut, and pretty much drinks herself into a stupor. Well, she winds up in bed at night, and in the morning she's woken up and she's like freezing. She discovers that she's just really cold. She's not feeling too well. And when she wakes up, she can hear the sound of a man with a very kind of like wheezy voice, like that kind of a sound. And she hears it in the room with her. It's not like it's coming from the next room. So she's looking all around. Finally, she sees the silhouette of a man standing in the room with her with a hat on. At this point, she lets out a scream. The blankets fly off her. She gets in the fetal position and she's screaming bloody murder for her sister. Her sister thinks she's a little crazy because she's like, I've lived here, X amount of years and never had nothing happen. And Deandra leaves and never comes back. So, needless to say, Deandra's story is one of many, but that is a very, seeing different kinds of shadow figures there, seeing men in suits, I mean, the Leland is just riddled with all kinds of paranormal activity and all kinds of paranormal stories and encounters. So if you do go there, definitely keep your eyes open, because you never know what you're going to see. And I mean that both like from a spiritual standpoint and from a human standpoint, because some of the people I've seen outside that place are a little sketch. And I don't want nobody winding up dead because of me. So real quick, we're going to touch on some Grosse Pointe legends. Just a couple here. There weren't too many, but I tried to put in some of the best ones that I could find. All right, so who has heard about the werewolf of Grosse Pointe? Anybody? Okay. So there was a man named Jacques Morand. I might be butchering these names, and if I am, I'm apologizing in advance. But he fell in love with a girl named Genevieve Parent, and he was, obsessed with her. But she liked him back, but she denied his love because she actually wanted to become a nun. She wanted to devote her whole life to God, and that was the path that she had decided on. Well, Jacques, in his desperate state, said, Satan, please take me. I just want Genevieve's love. I don't care what you do to me. Just take me. Well, the devil granted his wish, giving him the power to change form to easily carry away his crush. So one day, Genevieve was praying to a statue of Mary when a werewolf emerged from the woods and whisked her away. Now, at first she was just praying, probably regular praying, everyday praying, but when she saw this werewolf, she was praying for her life. Now, I kind of merge these two legends together because actually they're separate instances, but down the line, in later years, there was a young bride who was actually at her own wedding and was kidnapped by a werewolf, and it horrified all of the wedding guests. So she got whisked off by this werewolf. The groom spent his entire life hunting this werewolf down to try to get revenge on him. He caught several glimpses over his time and eventually was able to sever his tail with a bullet. Now, many people believe that the werewolf turned to stone at the point where Genevieve was found praying, as that's where he last saw her, in her normal state, I guess you could say, not traumatized state. And the werewolf's paw print is thought to exist in a rock on the shore of Lake St. Clair in Grosse Pointe. So if you're looking for some kind of, relic that he was here, go take a walk and start looking at some rocks, because you might see the paw prints. Now this is a little spooky. This kind of reminds me almost of the legend of the Nain Rouge, but this is like Grosse Pointe's version. So this is what they call the legend of Le Lutin. I'm probably saying that wrong, but Jacques, also known as Jacko, inherited a farm in Grosse Pointe. He had inherited a farm that was very rich with great soil, and so everybody had high hopes for him, but come to find out he was not good at farming and he didn't enjoy it. He was more interested in horses, so he wound up being a very successful horse breeder. Now, Leclerc was Jacques' prize horse. He rode her everywhere. He loved her, and she was just basically, his best friend. Well, one day after going to a party, he discovered that Leclerc was covered with foam and her mane was full of burrs. And this continued night after night after night. And finally, after he saw Leclerc looking so weary and exhausted, he said, I don't know what's going on here, but I must find out. I can't bear to see her in this state, especially with how beautiful she was. So he ended up adding a lock to the barn door, and he spread ashes on the property to capture any footsteps, but he had no luck, because in the morning, she still looked really terrible, and the lock was not broken, and there was no footprints in the ashes. So he finally goes to see a friend about this issue, because this is now getting out of control. And his friend says, it's the goblin who takes her. Now, his friend at this point is urging Jax, please, like, put a good luck charm around her neck, brand her with a horse, or, you know, not a horse, brand her with a cross, you know, help this poor horse out, do something for her that's going to actually benefit her, protect her. Well, apparently Leiluden didn't like Jax because he would ride the finest horses of the inhabitants he did not like. So he would take these beautiful horses and make them look very weathered. Well, Jax was done at this point. He's like, I don't know if it's a goblin, a person, whatever. I don't buy the story, but I'm done. So he takes a gun and he's waiting for his enemy at night. And finally he hears this awful neighing sound and he's like, I got it, this is my moment. You know, I'm gonna end this once and for all. Now, according to the Grosse Pointe Historical.org, the monster resembled a baboon with a homed head, a skin of bristling black hair, brilliant restless eyes, and a devilish sneer on its face. It clutched with one hand Claire's mane, and with the other hit her with a thorn bush stick, for the fiend rode without saddle or halter. Now, when Jax saw this very creepy and grotesque figure, he decides to throw holy water at the goblin, and the goblin and Claire disappeared into the lake forever. Now, until the automobile industry started, inhabitants would actually mark their horses with a cross to protect them from the return of Leiluden. And so we can thank the automobile industry for putting all this madness to rest. So thank you. Thank you, Ford, Cadillac, Chrysler, all those places. Now I will tell you, so some people, you know, they like legends and everything, but they wanna go to a place maybe where you can actually have like a true paranormal experience. So I did find one. It was actually hard to find anything in Grosse Pointe, but I did find one in Grosse Pointe Park at the Atwater Brewery. So in 2018, Detroit Paranormal Expeditions actually investigated there. They housed, the building housing the brewery was built in 1930s as a church. And employees over the years reported all sorts of things, from doors closing, disembodied voices being heard, and strange feelings in the basement. DPX captured what they believed to be a ghost on camera flying through the air, and this was actually aired on local news. So if you're interested in seeing this, look up DPX Ghost Atwater Brewery, and it will come right up on Google. If you're interested in learning more about their findings, you can also visit them at DetroitParanormalExpeditions.com. And if you want to have your own experience, visit the Atwater Brewery. So real quick, we're going to just do a couple questions. Anybody got a question? Yeah.
Have you ever visited or investigated Tom's Bar and Grill next to the Coble Garage?
Yes.
Have you seen stuff there?
I have heard about that place. I wanted to feature it in Haunted Detroit, but unfortunately I didn't. Only because I couldn't get the owner to get back with me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I did talk to him briefly, and he said he was interested, but then I didn't hear back from him. So it's very important for me, every place I write about, that I speak directly with the owners, staff, volunteers, so that I can get consent from everyone. Yes?
The Delphine Dodge, that was the Dodge's boat,
Uh-huh.
and they gave it to World War II as a mercy ship with the Red Cross.
Mm-hmm.
My very good friend's mother was Mrs. Dodge's nurse. She was a widow. And we would go down, we would leave school because she got off at 4. And we would go down to the Dodge estate. And Mrs. Dodge told us that when that boat came back, they could hear, it was, you know, the soldiers that were dying were on that ship.
Yeah.
And they brought it back up here through the causeways and that. She could hear voices on that ship. Have you ever heard of that?
I've never heard of it, but I'm going to look into it now, and I appreciate you sharing
Look
that.
into the Delphine Dodge.
It was renamed the Dauntless by the Navy.
Oh,
Yes.
And then Mrs.
okay.
Dodge got it back in 1946, spent $500,000 refurbishing it.
That's
I've
right.
heard about that too,
Have
some
you
of
heard
the,
about
some of
that
the
too?
sailors that,
That's cool.
yeah, but I knew her,
She would tell
I knew her
Roger,
great
my brother
grandson,
and I, we
yeah.
would sit in the house and she'd tell us stories about it.
I knew her family and nobody ever said anything about that. Interesting.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. We'll have one more question. Yes.
What was your favorite part about writing Haunting Detroit?
Well, the coolest part about probably writing the book was getting to go to each location and get kind of a behind-the-scenes tour and get to see some of the remnants of where people actually died and where their stuff was like still there. Because I took pictures of it and got to actually put it in the book, and I did a lot of research. So that was fun, like discovering, not only getting to go to the places, but discovering a lot of the history as well.
You guys think the guy, that werewolf, did he go to Detroit University or Grosse Pointe University School or he went to the public schools? They're from William, just giving them a hard time.
Yeah.
So, for those of you who are interested, real quick, these are the 3 books I've written. They're over on the table if anybody's interested. We also have the child's version of Haunted Detroit. We can take cash or card. If you have cash, it's $22. And then, you know, if you have card, we can just process that.
Very good.
That's a quick question.
Yeah.
Have you ever been so scared in going somewhere that you said you would never return there?
Never. I live for the fear, I guess. But these are also some events that I'm doing. If you're interested in those events, you can pick up my business card on the table. Bear with me just a moment. There's one more upstairs. Yeah, those are actually happening this weekend. Saturday, I'm doing ghost tours in Bay City. If any of you want to come out and do a ghost tour of through the old red light district in Bay City, grab one of my cards, follow me on social media, you can get all the information. And then at the Soaring Eagle Casino and Resort, I will be one of the speakers there for the Mid-Michigan Paranormal Convention. It's one of the biggest conventions in the state. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of speakers coming, lots of vendors. It's a very good time. It's 2 days. So November 4th and 5th. And then that's pretty much it. So like I said, thank you so, like I'm saying, thank you so much.